Hi, I'm Katie Hacker, your host for Beads, Baubles and Jewels. Today's designers are concentrating on cuffs with two unique styles. Up first is Leslie Rogalski. Leslie, I'm excited you're here.
I'm excited to be here.
Thanks. These bracelets are beautiful.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The patterns that you created are really, really beautiful.
Thank you. I'm very inspired by geometry, and these have a little bit of that Southwestern geometry, that Native American pattern.
Definitely. And what we're talking about here is the center is cut out, and then you've added these beads yourself, right?
That's right. There's no particular stitch involved, which is cool.
Yeah.
So you just sew from hole to hole, and the beads fill in the window.
No, that's really nice. And it looks like the holes are already there before you begin, right?
Yes, they're pre-drilled.
Okay. So how do we get started?
Let's get started. I have one row all the way in. These are designed for size 11 delegates. You have 7 in a column and 23 columns across.
Okay.
So I want you to notice how my first row, I'm ending up with the thread coming from the front to the back. And now I'm going to come through from back to front, almost like stepping up in beadwork, to start my next row. And I'm going to pick up the whole row of beads. I'm just going to pick up 7 beads.
Okay. So all of your thread work shows in this piece, so you could use different colors if you wanted that to be part of your design, but you kind of want to be mindful of keeping it consistent on the front.
That's right. It does show where it exits the beads and comes around to go to the other hole. So I'm going to come from back to front, and I'm doing this because I want these rows to be really sturdy.
Okay.
So I'm going to come out the second hole from back to front, and I'm going to go through that column of beads again.
It feels a little bit like looming.
It is a kind of looming. It is exactly that. And I'm pushing up from underneath. The window, it's cool, so you can really access your beads pretty easily. So I'm just going to sew back through the beads that I just strung.
Okay.
I'm going to come out on top, but there we go. I need to make sure that this column is attached on the back and the front. So you actually go through each column 3 times. So I'm bringing the thread through the window again, and I'm going to come up that second hole. So this time the thread is holding the column there. There we go.
Well, anytime you're doing this type of project, I feel like you're creating kind of a little piece of beaded fabric, you know?
That's exactly right. And it's just nice to have that sturdy. So here I came from back to front, and I'm going the 3rd time through that same column of beads.
Okay.
And again, this is just working with a needle and thread and going through it. It's not really a stitch or a technique, and I'm going back down from front to back, so I can come out the 3rd hole from back to front. So on the back of it, can I show you this one?
Sure.
So on the back of it, inside, you have this nice, tidy thread pattern. Even though you're not going to see it when you're wearing it, it's nice to keep that nice and clean.
It does look really good, and it also, that way, there's nothing that's going to get snagged.
That's right.
know?
That's right. And there's no knots, because I started with a stopper bead, and I'm going to pull the stopper bead off and thread this on a needle and just go one more time through that first column. And after I do the last column, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to come through the last column of beads that I add, and the tension of the thread inside the beads is what's going to hold it. There's nothing pulling on these beads, so you're going to have this nice, clean, finished, really professional looking cuff.
For sure.
To wear everywhere.
Yes, I love these. Can you show us one more row, on either
Sure,
spot?
I absolutely can.
Okay.
So here are my threads coming out the back of the second hole, and I'm coming out the 3rd hole. So I'm going to string 7 beads, and I'm just picking up a regular pattern. I have a tutorial for you guys that has a lot of different patterns all graphed out, so you can just copy those.
Okay.
And instructions that are repeating what I'm doing. So I'm coming from back to front. I'm going to go through the window, and I'm holding the beads in the window. And now I'm going to come from back to front through the next hole, the 3rd hole.
Okay.
Like that. And I'm just going to turn it to be convenient to hold, and I'm going to go back through that column of beads. So this is your 3rd column.
So I think
7
as
beads.
you're working along, you kind of get into the rhythm of this, and you can see where your bead placement needs to be. You know, so you
That's
could tell
exactly
if you've
right.
only gone through twice, it's a little bit it doesn't have as much body to it, or
That's
you know,
right, it's
the
going to
form.
firm it up.
Yeah.
And you can always look at the back of your cuff to think, oh, do I do front to back or back to front? Because you can see that it's starting to form the little zigzags that I have in my diagram.
Yeah, if you do another one, I bet we'll see more.
So I have, that's right. So I have one more pass to go through here so I can go from front to back to step up to the other one. I'm just going to go right through the beads that I just stitched. We're still in the 3rd column.
And these
There you go.
cylindrical beads too, that creates this kind of very smooth
Fabric.
fabric, you know, and everything
yes.
on here is smooth, so there's no abrasion on the thread.
There
There's
isn't.
nothing to get snagged.
It's the holes, you know, are smooth enough so you're not going to snag your thread.
Yeah, and here inside the channel as well.
And inside the channel. That's right. So, all right,
Nice.
now I know I have to step up by going from back to front to the next row. And I'm ready to string the 4th column of beads.
Okay, well, I want to ask you this question, and not to put you on the spot,
No.
but when you are designing patterns, you are an artist and graphic designer, so this is like, you know how to do this. But if it were me, what tips would you give me for how to create my own design?
Get a piece of plain old graph paper, and because the pattern is just straight across and up and down, and you can play with colors that way. Also look for inspiration like I did to Native American patterns, and I adapted them to make my own. So you can even just do stripes. You know, like here, I'm doing just a solid color with a single color as the middle bead. You could do that all the way across, and it would look really awesome.
It would look great.
Yes, so you can make it up as you go along, even if it's just a mix or a blend. Think of the texture that it would form in the beadwork. It would look really cool. Pick your favorite colors and go nuts.
Right, I totally agree.
Yeah.
And you have this whole Southwestern thing going with these patterns that you made, but you even chose Southwestern colors for this.
Well, I did.
All you have to do is put turquoise and coral together, and we know it's a
Right,
Southwestern.
but think about if this doesn't float your boat and you want to do something really graphic, do something in black and white.
Oh, you love
And just
black
do
and white.
stripes and or checkerboards by alternating every other, and because it's an odd number of beads, you get to do like that middle line.
Oh,
so
that's
that
a
middle
great-
line symmetry.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
Now, I know this one isn't quite finished, but can you show us what you would do to tie it off or weave in the ends or however you are?
Sure, and I can show you that by doing it with the tail thread, because you're going to do exactly the same thing when you get to the end. I don't do any knots. I'm going to pull my bead off, and I'm going to do a really fast needle threading. And what you do is you thread the thread on the needle really fast, pull it down till it's a pinpoint, goes through. You're just going to sew right back through that last column of beads and trim it. That's all you do.
Oh, okay.
It's just sew through
Okay.
from the back. Hopefully you can, maneuver that, and it's just you're going to trim it on the back so the end doesn't show on the front.
Right.
That's it. And you're going to do the same thing after you do your last row.
All right, well, let's take
Very
one final
easy.
look at your bracelets here. These are gorgeous. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Leslie. I always love the ideas that you bring.